Man, a paper and thing, boy. You do homework.
Hello and welcome to the Caribbean Content Creators Show, the show where we talk to creators about the business of creativity and content creation in the Caribbean. Errol Fabien is a comedian, television and radio presenter from Trinidad and Tobago. Born in Guapo, Fortin, he's number 6 of 9 children. He attended Naparima College where he studied theatre. In 1978, he joined the West Indian Theather Company. He's appeared in ads, plays, and movies with a role in Men of Grey, Flight of the Ibis. In 2004, he co-founded Gayelle, We Own TV, to spread local content. As a writer, I have benefited from Gayelle. So, Mr. Fabien, it's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Just right, Lyndon. Thanks for having me. All that information, you don't need me again.
So, you celebrated 62 years old on December the 5th,
That's
2022.
Correct. That's correct. Quite recently.
What was the highlight of your day?
That I did nothing.
Nothing.
I did nothing. I just chilled.
Much I want to talk to you about, but today I want to build a picture of storytelling and the early days of comedy in Trinidad and Tobago. What defines Trini-style comedy?
Well, in the days you're talking about, I would have to say joke telling. We are joke tellers, and nothing is wrong with that. We're also storytellers. So you'll find that when we're telling a joke, we paint that whole picture. So it's almost like a little story you're getting, you know? Because oftentimes you will hear a Trinidad comic say, here, this one, I have to get this one before I go. You know, so they identify that it is one thing, then a next thing, then a next thing, then a next thing. It's a little different to the type of comedy you'll find in the UK and in the US and some other parts of the world. But more and more, I know you didn't want to come forward yet, but I'm seeing a change or evolution happening in the type of comedy.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I want to talk about. And kind of wondering, so just to understand the storytelling aspect that you're talking about here, is it that if you have an entire routine, that the routine is all connected in a sense versus... the UK or European style is more disconnected type jokes?
No, we very, very much would like to connect our stuff. That's a natural, instinctive way that we go as Caribbean people. Even with the younger comedians I'm seeing now, it's a whole little unit that they'll put together to do that, to do their routine, as we would say.
You attended Guapo Government School in the 1960s. Your dad is the vice principal. At a TED Talk, you describe living in a home full of love, where you all are rearing livestock, planting your food. Your dad is a storyteller. Your mom is the economist and the storyteller as well. And in secondary school, you mentioned about you telling your classmates stories. Your dad told you, or your mom told you. So of all the jokes or stories your father told or mom told you, which one stands out the most?
Excuse me. Boy. It's so much. In fact, my first routine as a comedian in Port of Spain was all jokes from my father. All of it was jokes from my father. But there's one he did about a boy who was always coming last in test. And the mother decided, well, she's going in school for the teacher because it's victimization. He can't be always coming last. So she braced the teacher and she jacked him up against the blackboard, he foot off the ground dangling and thing. And she tell him, it's victimization, how he always coming last. She say, well, madam, actually, this is the first time that he almost come second to last. There's one question he get wrong. Why he end up last again? She said, well, ask me the question. He said, but that's not going to prove anything. She said, ask me the question. Because all they victimizing the boy. So he asked her, in what year did our Savior die? She said, you see, all they victimizing the boy. We live Dashing Bush Street, the last house, right? We don't even get newspaper until we buy fish. I didn't even know the man was sick. You expect the boy to know when he dead, there's such a colorful thing, and I love to give it, I love to relate the story of it with all the coloring and shading and thing, And that's one of my father's jokes that I really, really enjoyed. That stands out for me.
So I'm just joined by my dad. Dad, come and have a seat now.
Hello, my dad.
I don't have a microphone for you, though.
Just right, man. It's a pleasure. Good to meet you.
You're looking like Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders, a little bit.
But boy, I don't often have a good joke. Yeah?
Uh-huh.
And next to Mr. Fabien here, I know I can't come close to his boots at all.
Right.
So I decided if you could look at my mustache and get a laugh.
You're taking that.
You're thinking that.
Also, I want to preempt a little bit, right?
Yeah.
This is to you, sir. I need to sign it.
Oh my God.
So my dad, this is I mentioned your book, Ghost of Cora, to Mr. Fabien before when we were talking to him. And he said, I have to talk to your dad, boy. I have to talk to your dad.
Yeah.
So what I am doing, because I don't have a microphone for you, and we start the audio portion of it. So you're in the background. But if you have any questions and you want to bring it up at any time, I will just keep the ball rolling with it, right? So
Thank you, Lance.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's like promotional stunt of the century there, boy. Yeah, man. 10 points for marketing, daddy.
Shut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you written any books?
No, I have not written any books. I've written plays. I've written some articles. I have written structures for bigger shows, like when producing shows, you have to script stuff and so on. Yeah, but I haven't written any books.
Okay.
I have quite a few books in me to be written. Quite a few.
If you had to write a book of the few that you have, which one would you'd prioritize?
I would write one called Running Out of Tears.
Running Out of Tears.
Because I cry a lot. And sometimes I think I'm going to run out of tears because of things that affect me so deeply. Not only things that hurt me, I cry a lot when I'm happy too, And my wife, I have a wife, 3 years, we're going to be 4 years married soon. And she can't get over it up to now. So, you cry so much? Because, part of it, Lyndon, is that when I was drugging, when I was an active addict for all those years, I didn't feel anything. And I didn't allow myself to feel anything. So today I embrace all of my emotions. And there are some things that if I see it 100 times,
right,
I'm going to cry 100 times.
So you're probably one of the worst people to watch an Indian movie with that.
Yeah.
I remember when I see Carl Huna, who I cry about 100 times.
There you go, you see? And if I watch it 10 more times, that be 1,000 cry,
Yeah.
Just last night, we were watching something, my wife and I, and it's something I've seen 1,000,000 times. And she look over, she say, what? Got tears rolling down because I connect with emotions on a real, real level, and as let it go. So Running Out of Tears. I also said that will be the name of my biography, should that day come, if it's written that, Yeah, because I've had a very joyous and a very painful life. Yeah.
Like you, I am easily moved to tears too. And I remember with Dad and they going to Disney World, going to different places, SeaWorld and whatnot. And I would find myself moved to tears when I see the talent that people, they put out,
right,
that pours out of them. And I didn't plan to share the story, but I'll share it. In preparing for this interview and looking at your different routines, interviews, your TED Talks and whatnot, I found myself moved to tears for the reason that I realized that I am about to speak to someone that has impacted my life in a significant way. I think as a really young boy, I saw you maybe at an expo in, when you used to have the expo in Jean Pierre Complex.
Right,
I feel like I saw you there and some other places as well, popping up on TV. And you realize that I realize that I have this privilege to talk to this person that is a local hero. And I'm even thinking of the interview that he did with Fuzzy Entertainment.
Fuzzy, yeah.
And him, singing that song of Errol Fabien, the hero.
Wow.
And it is a pleasure. I hope you don't start to cry now. So you are 6 of 9 children.
Correct.
In an interview, you once said that it's easy for the 6th or the 7th child to disappear because probably what's happening with the older siblings, the younger one. And you have 7 children.
Yes, I do.
You're
8 now.
8 now.
Yeah, I got one from marriage.
Okay.
My wife had one. My present wife had one. So I now have 8.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So what are some of the things you practice to make each of your children feel equally loved?
Well, what I have tried, I don't know how successful I've been, is to really listen to each one and deal with each one. It's cheaper by the dozen when we buy in food. But discipline and attentiveness and all these things is not cheaper by the dozen at all. You know, there's a child, I only have to say, look, stop that for me, please. And I know I do have to go back there again. But there's a child I'll have to go and take and move away from there and say, sit down right here with me or whatever it is, you know. And at an earlier time in my life, I used to hit my children. But I've grown past that. And I thank God for that because I never felt good. I never felt good about it. And I'm glad I was able to get to a place. So I have two sons, 18 and 19. I think my 19-year-old might be get a slap once or twice, maybe. But I know my youngest boy, and I have a daughter who's 30, them, I never touched them. I never had cause to, you know, because I spend time with my children when they're very young. I spend as much time with them as I can so that we connect, you know, so that discipline is always necessary, or as I say, it is consequences. And consequences goes both ways because for good behavior, there are good consequences. And negative behavior will attract negative consequences. But yeah, there's no single thing to work for all the children unless it's a potapilao. Once it's not like that, each child will have a different requirement and a different demand.
I'm seeing that and learning that more and more with my children. I like how it take you so long like that to realize that, boy. Because I think about Anna and Haley, and they're very different styles and whatnot. And you could talk to Anna and, yeah, right, cool. She'll come immediately. And one of the things I've been wondering as a creative person recently, and I think it started to affect me, is, you know, with creativity requires significant investment in terms of time. For you, it might be the time that you spend live streaming. For me, it might be the time that I spend editing videos and whatnot. And how have you, I'd have this as like a formal question in mind, but how has your creativity affected that? Or is there at times that you have to just learn to let go, put down the camera? I kind of not clear what I'm asking.
we have to let go. Some of my children got into my work because they were on my lap while I was working. Yeah? And I feel as though it's not fair to them, although it is saving me right now. Because my youngest son, he's just turned 18 in August. I don't have to do a single thing at Gayelle. He could set up the lights, he could set up the studio, he could set up the cameras, he could run master control, switch between the cameras live, he could take the content afterwards, edit it, he could live stream it, he could set up the audio. If a parang band come, he run out all the lines to all the different microphones. If something had to go through a direct box, he could set that up. He can do everything, and he never went anywhere to learn anything except in daddy lap, growing up while I doing everything I doing. You know, so that come like a savior now, but the place now where I want to tell him, and I've been saying to him, you know, you do have to be trapped in this, you know, son. Whatever it is that you really want to do. I hear and we could pursue that, you know, because sometimes, and I've seen it in the movies and things, sometimes children feel a duty-boundness to be there to support parents. And children, no child is duty-bound to support their parents, you know. Your duty is to find yourself. And if in finding yourself, you find, well, okay, I want to do this, what daddy was doing, or mommy was doing, and things, fine. But find yourself. When I was small and we read story, somebody leave to go and seek their fortune. I've come to understand that our fortunes are when we find ourselves. Because in ourselves and in finding ourselves, there's all the wealth we'll need for the journey, all the spirituality we'll need for the journey, all the technical know-how and so on we'll need for the journey are all in that bag when we find ourselves. You know, so I encourage, like my children, I don't like them to study in Trinidad. If you want to study in university, I bite the bullet, I find a way, but you have to go and be on your own and learn to manage your time and meet your deadlines and have nothing to eat and it's month end and daddy didn't send the money yet and the internet might cut off and to deal and to juggle these things, you know, that I think juggling the realities and the vagaries of today's living in every time is what helps us to find ourselves. Because we had to be forced to cook something because we can't buy. So we had to buy some peas and bun it, and the next time we'll get it right. And, so I like to push them out the nest on their own. And sometimes it's the 25th of the month, I had the money, but I'm not sending it till the 31st or the 1st. And they call and say, Daddy, I say, okay. But I really need to say, okay, well, have fun, take care. And inside, it hurted me more than it will ever hurt them. But I know and understand the value of the process they're going through.
That is not a philosophy I associate with Caribbean parenting. And, listening to you speak, I suddenly feel ashamed of living at home until I was 33 years old. Yeah. So, I mean, where... At what point that thinking kind of came to you, or was it always there? Was it some way your parents treated you?
No, I don't know how that came. It's just when my first daughter needed to go off to study, and she do the SATs, and like she was reluctant to go to the school, I end up calling the school, and say, hi, this is Miss Fabien. You have had my application and I haven't heard anything, and push her to go out there. And then when I saw what blossomed, I was amazed that was that same child. The eldest, she helped me because I was a single daddy for a lot of their years of life. And she helped me a lot with the younger ones. But I didn't see, although she had that sense of responsibility, I didn't see the child or the human being that she was until she went out on her own. And the same thing happened with the second, and the same thing happened with the third. And the third, wow, the third didn't even go to study in a place where the language was her first language. She studied in Brazil, where she had to live and be conversant in Portuguese for her first year before he could start school, because a lot of people are not aware that the Brazilian government gives 2 scholarships every year to Trinidad nationals. But we saw custom looking north. We don't look south to see what there is. And the embassy is very helpful, very, very helpful in making it happen, So that's where she went. And I've seen it at my youngest daughter. Oh, my God, she didn't want to go. From small, she telling me I'm studying in UWI St. Augustine, Daddy. She don't want to go on. So when I took her to Mona campus, that girl cried. She cried, snot in she nose and tears in she eye. But the adult who came home was worth all of the inside pain and everything that I felt, leaving her there and so on. I was worth it, more than worth it. In fact, wow, the doctor's been talking, and she's a physiotherapist. And after my motorcycle accident, this shoulder had a posterior dislocation. And it's because of her I could raise this hand now, when the accident just happened and so on, I couldn't even move this hand. I tried to move it and it wouldn't move. And she'd be there like the adult. Okay, Daddy, you could do this. We're going to start easy, nice and easy. We're just going to do this for today. I want you to try and do it when I'm not here. And she lives at home with me. So, she moved back in. So now she is my physiotherapist and she's in charge. She's in charge of my recovery.
So much for sharing that, because I realized that, in the moment where you're expressing that hey, I need to probably adjust some of the things that I am thinking about and how I see it. So
I think you need to move in with Errol.
I'm trying to throw you out, boy.
Yeah, it took me a long time to move out of home. So I want to build a picture of the early days of comedy in Trinidad and Tobago. In 1978, you joined the West Indian Theather Company. You're introduced to the world of comedy. Back then, who are the hotshots in comedy? Who are you looking to for inspiration? Who are you studying closely?
Errol Stork St. Hill. He was the artistic director and writer, producer, and lead actor at West Indian Theatre. That's why I ended up there in part. Errol Stork St. Hill was the man at the moment in comedy in Trinidad and Tobago at the time. Himself and John Agitation, Bueller. They had a fella named Jonesy. In another circuit, which I never saw or got exposed to, it was Lennox Lake, and this boy, oh my God, Glenn Davis. You know, that was a different area. I wasn't really exposed to that tour, but I've heard of them and the work that they did. But over on that side, Horace James also was in that line over on the people who I was exposed to. Yeah, those were the people doing comedy. Horace was affected by British comedy because he studied in England and he came back home. John Agitation, the greatest joke teller of all times, he is the man who grew up country, real country. And he had that whole, he should bring that into his comedy. He'd say, well, poopa. And as you hear that, people don't know story coming, and we preparate ourselves for a good laugh. Stoke Central was like between the two. Stoke had a very unique thing that I only came to know when I came to know Stoke, you know? And Horace James had a program on TV that had been in the 80s, though, I think, called Let's Laugh. You know, and people would come up and give a joke and come and give a joke and that kind of thing. And I used to love to see Let's Laugh. But a lot of my comedy exposure in those days came from Calypso, from listening to Calypso. When I hear Farmer Brown from Lord Funny, you know, it's so brilliantly written. What he did with words, and as my partner Hamidullah says, it could be sung in the Vatican because it's clean as a whistle, but what less too bad at the same time, you know? So, and my father, another fellow who thought he was a comedian, but he wasn't, you know. He always come home and have one for you. So at the time, to answer the question, these are the things that I was seeing. The Horace James, the Stoke St. Hill, and Stoke would take 10 jokes and write a play. You know, he would, if you want to do a play on Coming Up by Lyndon, he would get the jokes that he think that he could connect to this thing, and he would string them together at a script. And that is something I really very much took from Stoke St. Hill. So I was getting that from Stoke with all his comedy, and he was very, very funny, very funny. And John Agitation, Daddy, and that was the whole thing. And the Calypso, wow, Calypso is like just the greatest thing in the whole world, you know, for me. Yeah.
So very much for outlining that. And what I would do for folks that are listening, and like me, maybe not familiar, in the show notes, I will put links to the different comedians. I was looking at something last night with John Agitation. And he has this mastery of expression. And then he has a way that he kind of swings. He puts his hands into his jacket pocket and kind of swings like a kind of spoiled brat.
Yes,
like
with
almost
the face
like a
to go
child.
to too. How it works on stage, Lyndon, we need a stage persona. Yeah, we, especially comedians, we have a stage self, but that is for stage. That's our stage self. Our off-stage self could be very close, but is a different self. I am not that guy who I am on stage when I'm at home at all, you know, because, you know, there are different demands. You know, life has demands in different areas. And there are a lot of demands when I'm on stage that do not exist when I'm at home. For example, on stage, as a stand-up comedian, I'm in charge. At home, I understand that my wife is in charge. You understand? So there are different demands in different areas of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Who are some of the women around that time that you're hearing about?
Beulah is the only woman I knew of the time who was involved in any real comedic efforts. Yeah, Shirley King, Beulah.
About seeing Beulah on TV as a little boy, and then she had this skit with the TV production where this guy he wanted to run away to go to Venezuela for Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
Cocoa Payol or something. So I think.
Wow. You could tell us a little bit more
Stoke
about
was in
Beulah?
that, you know.
Oh, that is Stoke.
Yeah, Stoke
okay.
It was called Caracas for Christmas.
Caracas for
Caracas
Christmas.
for
Yeah,
Christmas.
fantastic production, man. And who's in charge when you're seeing these type of productions on TV back then, whether it's in the 80s or whatever? That's something like TTT.
Most of it would have come out of TTT, but specific producers did those things. Horace James, Timmy Mora, Stephen Lipow. These are the guys who made the Sugarcane Arrows, the No Boundaries, They did the Tobagos. They did Calabash Alley. They would have done Turn of the Tide. These guys are the backbone, and the guys at Banyan also, Christopher Laird and Bruce Paddington, Tony Hall. These are the filmmakers of the day who really created all of that content. It wasn't a big pool of them. We also had a great filmmaker, Horace Ovey, who didn't do a lot of work locally, but those were the guys: Horace James, Stephen Lee Powell, Timmy Mora, Christopher Laird.
Tell us what Banyan is exactly. A production
Banyan
company.
is currently a television production company. And that's what they were always. But initially, they were like a workshop when people would come in and they would work together and kind of help build up skills and qualities that are needed. But it developed into a full-fledged television production company and is responsible for having documented and teaching people to document most of the Caribbean life as it existed post the invention of videotape. Because before that, they would not have been able to do any documenting. For example, last night from the Banyan archive, I played a little piece last night, a Stalin concert from the 3rd of May, 1992, that people didn't see yet. But you would go and record. And in the 90s, they would not have had an outlet like Gayelle, which is a television station. It had to be buying time and so on. So that's there. And there's a 2-hour-long interview, again, with Stalin that Louis Regis did and Christopher Laird. And so I just got those two things downloaded from the Banyan archive yesterday. So I'm going to be setting up to share it with our audiences closer to Carnival.
And this is a collection that is all digitized now that you could pull from easily.
It is now digitized. And I will tell you the sad story. It was a foreign university who paid the money to digitize it. When a lot of efforts were made locally with, different entities that should, including the National Archive, who should be watering and salivating to get this thing, because it doesn't belong to Banyan. It doesn't belong to Gayelle. It belongs to the people of the Caribbean. And somewhere along the line, we need to see and cognize a kind of understanding of this from corporate and from administrative places where they would invest in things like this. Most recently, it was a real blessing to find out that the National Gas Company, it was an announcement made by Mr. Stephen Luquan that they are buying the archive from Banyan. They're paying for it to make it available to everybody.
Nice to
Nice.
meet you,
God
Errol.
bless you.
Yes, man.
Yeah,
Remember you're wearing a mustache. Looking for time.
I good. All right.
You're good? You're cool?
All right. All
Yeah?
right.
I could offer something to eat.
I-
You want to finish this and then...
yeah, deal with this.
Okay. About the first time you met Sprangalang.
Wow. First time I met Sprangalang, he was at Naparima Bowl. He was part of a duo called Odds and Ends Productions. They were a technical team, but they were into some performing. It was himself and Oliver Williams. Odds and Ends Productions did lighting and sound and all this kind of thing. And that is when I first met Sprangalang. He was Dennis Hall. He wasn't Sprangalang yet. At Gayelle, he got the name Sprangalang. He was still Dennis. And these guys, I would sit at their feet, catching every word that fall out of their mouth, because I would have been at school at Naparima College and would come down in the bowl to lime a little bit sometimes. And I would see Tony Hall and Dennis Hall and Oliver Williams and all these amazing people who I ended up having the pleasure of working with.
Is there a connection between Dennis Hall and Tony Hall?
Well, Tony is Dennis's big brother. Yeah, they both went to Naparima College.
And you also have a brother that's into
Nigel, one of my younger brothers into comedy and that kind of thing.
I appreciate so much what you're telling me about the on-stage persona, because I had the privilege of growing up in Trinity.
Right.
And a lot of times in my youth, I would go to Trinity Mall and I would see who I knew as Sprangalang walking.
Right.
And I was always a little bit maybe confused. I would hear, Sprangalang! And it would be a kind of gruff response, right? It's like, well, does he say funny guy here watching on TV, boy? So, and I think it's important for people to kind of differentiate that or appreciate that, because it must be. You have your life going on, as you mentioned.
And boy, the thing is, well, for me, when I'm out, I belong to the public. So I put up with it. My wife, she's new. But I'm invisible because the public really don't see who you're with, They see you and they don't care who you're with. If they want the picture, they kiss, they hug up, they want to give you a joke, they want you to give them a joke, whoever it is, they in business. If you're happy, you're sad, you want to pee, you now come from the toilet, your mother, your dog now dead, they're in business with none of that because you're their property when you're out. So I prepare myself for that, or as I say, preparate myself for that when I'm out because I only go out when I have to. I don't go on Lime. I don't go to fetes. I don't do any of that. It's just too much for me. So I go to work. I may go out to dinner with my family. I may go to the movies. I enjoy going to the movies. It's dark. Nobody to talk to you. You watch the movie. I have the timing exact. I know when to walk in. And I don't see credits because I'm gone. Yeah. I don't go to shows because I like watching work, Because I'm watching a show and I'm studying the IQ late, the audio need a level in, he too far upstage, this one too far downstage, didn't like this. It's work. It's just work. It's watching work, So I really don't enjoy shows too much. And then if I sit where they could see me, somebody gonna call me. Even if it's say, hey, and Errol, and whoever, and then everybody in the audience know I'm there, and so it's fine though. I'm all right. I enjoy the life I have. I spend most of my time at home. I pick up little hobbies. I do little woodworking. They break in the place and going with all my power tools about 4 nights ago. So I had to get them back for them.
Yeah.
But you have a stage life. You have a stage persona. But that's not the guy who we are when we're in our other dispensations.
And when you go out, you make a conscious decision that I belong to the people at that point in time.
I smile with everybody. I listen to everybody. I deal with everybody.
I am so happy that we're chatting because I am learning a lot from you. A little bit about the creative process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without knowing why, I am so very curious about writing jokes and comedy writing techniques like setting up a joke, the premise, role playing, and delivering the punchline. So as a writer, I want to write better jokes. And listening to your routines, I'd love to know more about your creative process for creating and refining jokes.
In my mind, right, if the joke is over here, I have to get you over here. You must not see it coming. And that is when a joke works. If halfway through the joke, I know where the punchline coming, the joke didn't work. So if it is here, I need to bring you all the way over here so that this could hit you very hard. You'll just be in shock. Sometimes, and I mean, it's not nice to deal with on stage, but sometimes the punchline has hit the audience members or some of them when they're on their way home, Then is when they're like, oh gosh, Yeah. Sometimes I say it and you get it one time, but you wasn't looking for it there, And that is, Calypso taught me that. I learned that from Calypso.
So which Calypsonians, because to back up what you're saying, right? Uh-huh. Is it in 1998 you were in New York and you're giving the story, you were focusing on the story of traveling and whatnot, mm-hmm. and you give this story that had me on a string, brother, which is where this dog on the flight and the flight attendant, the service rep that they said, and you had me on a string. And when you get to that point, I was like, I did not see that coming.
That is when it works. That is when it works. That wasn't my own joke, but I like to, as you say, refine and make things my own.
What is a comedian's secret weapon, you would say?
Everybody has their own. Mine is, and is a very, very, very crucial thing. In exactly 3 to 5 seconds, I have to decide who my audience is and which direction I'm going with you. And I do it by saying, good night, everybody. And whether everybody answer or not, I then go, nah, that wasn't everybody, man. Good night, everybody. And if they go up when I do it the second time, I know they come out to have fun. And I know how hard to go. If when I say the second time you get less or the same amount, my work cut out for me. I have plenty work to do that night. I have to work overtime and push more and work harder because this is an audience who kind of like, well, make we laugh now. But if they go on louder when I say it wasn't everybody, there's an audience that's saying, Errol, what you have for me tonight? Let me go, you know? So that is my weapon. That is my weapon. My arsenal is there over all the years I've been doing it. I have stuff I could refer to, pull out, add this to that and this to that and that to that and create a whole new kind of thing right there on stage. Or I'm very aware of what is happening in the world around me every day. And that's very important for any comedian. There mustn't be a topic you cannot speak on. So then you could make it funny, you know, or disarm it. So I know all what's happening in the world, all what's happening in news, everything when I walk on stage. If you go to a country, you must find the newspaper of the day of that country and run through it, see the headline. Who's the prime minister? Who is the chief justice? Who is the criminal lawyer? Where's the crime hotspot in the country? Where, you know, you have to have all these references. So when you start to talk now, you make them feel like you are part of the fabric of who they are.
Thank you very much. So you just given me these golden nuggets, and I really, you know, when I thought about talking to you, I had it in mind that I really want to build this picture of the early days of comedy, your secret weapons, your little techniques that you're sharing, so that the younger generation coming up that probably on social media don't have a sense of going into the archives or turning on Gayelle, you know, they could listen to a master of the craft. And I appreciate you going so deep into it. Now, years ago, when 51, there was a club called 51 Degrees. I don't know if they're still there.
Yeah. On Cipriani Boulevard.
Yeah, so I went to 51, and there's this, I think he's an American comedian. I believe his name was Tony Woods. And he had come from Jamaica, and he does his routine. And boy, he performed to a tough crowd. He had his work cut out for him. And at the end of it, he expressed exactly that. He said, man, you all have been a tough crowd. What's the hardest crowd you ever worked in? Which country?
Boy, in Trinidad, you know. Yeah, in the early days, you know. Trinidad audiences are not at all an easy audience. If you can please a Trinidad audience, in particular a South audience, you're really on top of your game. Trinidad audience, not easy.
What makes a South audience harder?
I'm going to get licks for this, but I'm going brave.
Don't say anything that you're going to get licks for. We love it too much.
I'm going brave. They're a brighter bunch of people. They're more connected to art. They're more artistically minded, generally. I'm not saying Port of Spain people not artistically minded or so, but especially in the era, I go to rehearsal in Naparima Bowl with Stoke, right? Eugene Joseph Dance Company rehearsing. This lady, I'll come back to her, Torrance Mohammed have rehearsal, you know. I can't remember, I've seen the lady in front of an interview. And anyway, but there are so many arts groups doing their thing there. And none of them, as far as I was concerned or could have seen, doing it to become stars. They just, there's so much opportunity for artistic expression in South, you know, so that, and they know art. So you can't come and Papi show a South audience. You have to come good. When you come in South, you have to come good. You understand? And I lived quite a bit of, most of my life I've lived in the North, right? And I've never had that sense of the amount of groups. Now, there's Richard Drago Bassing and so on in more recent time. Quite about 6 theatre company in South when I was in South, right? And in my day, Richard, Raymond has died, but he had some going on. The Bagasse Company, I worked with them. Judy Stone had some, and then the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. And the amount of work that they were putting out was nowhere near to the amount of work that was happening in South. Every weekend had a show in San Fernando. You know, somewhere in San Fernando had something going on. And the artists in San Fernando got a piece of land and we built our own creative arts center in San Fernando. You know, so it's a whole different approach to art. And when I say build it, we didn't just get the money and build it, you know. We get the land, then we went and cleared the land, and then we had to clear it again. And here's part and we had to clear it again before some brick and mortar and cement and thing reach and thing. But now there's a center there with a proper performance space and so on.
Where exactly is this?
It is on Circular Road in San Fernando, just almost next to Paramount Building, OWTU. If you're driving past on Circular Road and OWTU on your left, and you don't stay with the road, you go straight inside the Creative Arts Center. I have art exhibitions and different things happening there. You know, Skinner Park in San Fernando for Calypso Fiesta. If you ain't go there, get toilet paper. You know, and sometimes they're waiting for you with the toilet paper because they know or they don't like you. They let you know they don't like you. You, as a Calypsonian, you have to pass Skinner Park and survive Skinner Park to know, all right, you have something in you. Yeah, it's a different breed. It's a different breed entirely.
To raise money to start Gayelle, you and Christopher Laird, who you mentioned, you all put together an 8-minute demo video
of what the station
to present to sponsors. Yeah. The event here raises $1.5 million, and I'd love to get a sense of what is on that 8-minute video that will convince people to say this is worth investing in.
Right. So it would have featured, who was in that, bro? I think it was Tony in it talking about, so what are we going to do today? And, well, the Kendra was having something that is Hindu. We talk about things coming up in the Muslim community, things coming up in the African community vis-a-vis Orisha and that kind of thing. What happened, you know, so it gave us sense of all this thing. And then there was the news, and the news was called Not the Real News, and Sprangalang did that in the demo. And we've never been able to do that news because the demand of news in this inside the box of media calls for a different thing. And we tried our best. The closest we came was with the amazing Paolo Kernahan, who was our head of news. And this is after Suniti Mirage helped us set it up. Tony Frazier had a go at it to all understanding and pulling from in Christopher's head and my head where we were going. And they push it, train people up and so on. We found that our best people in news were people who we trained up and not who we got from other newsrooms. And then along came Paolo Kernahan. And that was the icing on the cake, you know. And that's the closest we came to doing news in a kind of a way that we thought news needed to be approached from, and not the news agenda set by the other news people, that we must set our own news agenda.
So was it like some political satire inside of their jokes? Or
Paolo developed a program called Skews,
right,
where all this satirical stuff happened. But in terms of the news, it was not just, if it bleed, it leads. It was more community stuff and what was going on in the arts community and the community in general and so on. We didn't ignore crime and so on, but it wasn't our lead stories. And as a policy, we never went to, media conferences. Everybody had the same thing. When you stand up and talk in a media conference and 10 TV stations pointing the camera at you, everybody had the same thing. So we didn't bother to go to those things. We would invite you to come to our station after or the next day. And we would talk to you at length about what you're doing and challenges. A Gayelle, you know, so you have to get challenged. You know, in a Gayelle, you don't stand up and show off yourself. In a Gayelle, you defend yourself and you try to win.
And, I want to thank you once again. You know, as a writer, years ago, I came into Gayelle and I spoke to Mr. Dennis Makumi. About my book. So you all have you have a space that, you know, the supporting local, it sings out. And it's important that this archive we discussed earlier is in the hands of the people versus the government.
Well, we want the government to want it for the people. You know, is the government the elected officials or is the government the people? You know what I mean? And the people want it. Let me tell you, it's been my experience that some people not even watching Gayelle, but don't move it, you know. Don't take down Gayelle, you know. As we come in, we making noise, you can't do Gayelle that, but they don't watch, you know, some of them. But to know that this thing that tells my story exists, and I don't know if it's even a conscious thing for people, because Gayelle is for when you reach a certain stage in your life. It's not for everybody at every stage in their life. You get to a stage in your life where you look for Gayelle, where you want to see and you want to hear and you want to know about yourself. When you get to that point, some people get there in their teens, some people get there in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. But when you get to that place is when your remote does take you to Gayelle. And we'll be there. We'll always be there.
I am guilty of not supporting local, for not watching Gayelle enough. And I do think I quite get why it is so important to support local. I'm sorry to admit that. I'm ashamed to admit it. But let me think about times that I see a writer on the side of the road or walking through a mall or somebody peddling a CD and I say no to them. And then in the same breath, the times where I have said yes and maybe I realized that this content wasn't for me.
Right.
I didn't particularly enjoy it. My taste wasn't there. Why is it important to support local despite your taste, despite if it doesn't meet your expectations?
I would tell you. Wow, that is the most important question of our lifetime. We always support something, right? When we don't support local and we support foreign, and when I say foreign, I don't speak about the Caribbean. I speak about outside of the Caribbean. Support means we spend $1 and it means we'll develop that industry in that place. And our industry will be left unsupported, so unfunded, and cannot develop. And it's important to develop our industries. Art is a civilizing agent. It is very important for every society. If you go to New York, to London, you name it, to Australia, the big opera houses and the theaters and so on are in the best real estate in the city, but art cannot support it. Art is supported. So out there, private sector and so on have a sense of their obligation to do this. We must support this and keep this alive because art shows us who we are. And if we lose that, we lose a civilizing agent. Because when we go to the theater and look at ourselves, 2 weeks later, we're talking to our wife or a friend or whatever it is, and it's going to come up because it is bothering us. And if we ignore the artists, we ignore development. We ignore civility. As offensive as art can be, and it has to be sometimes, it is showing you yourself. You know, a lot of talk around now about, and even in Jamaica, I saw some about banning certain kinds of music. You know, so you're trying to close your eye. But that music is showing you who you are. That music is not affecting behavior. Behavior is affecting that music. That is what art is. Art is a mirror. The artist sees what's going on and puts it into song. Sees what the society is looking like and puts it into a play. Sees it, puts it into a painting, puts it into architecture, puts it into everything that is of art. It's the society that informs it. It doesn't inform the society. So it is important to support local, even if it doesn't suit your taste. You might know somebody and say, hey, I get a CD today. This is not my thing, but I feel you might enjoy it, or whatever it is, you know? Or to say no to the complimentary and say, I'll buy the ticket, it's all right. I'll buy it this time, you know? To support art, because it is the thing that will rescue us, you know? In times of depression, economic depression, art blossoms, because it is the place where we go if we're not going to the bottom of a bottle of alcohol to deal with life. We decide we're going to go to a comedy, we go to a drama, we go to the movies, whatever it is. That is how we find a coping mechanism. Art is very, very, very important. In fact, it's the biggest industry in the world. The arts industry is bigger than sport, bigger than tourism, bigger than energy, bigger than anything there is. It's art.
Very much for that. And I am a little bit surprised, even in my own work on YouTube, where I'm making videos featuring Cora heavily, that I would meet people and they would say to me, we appreciate what you're doing. I think about even the work that you're doing when you're live streaming your videos, and you would have somebody from Trinidad in New York, and you could identify them, and you're giving them this moment of relief. Enjoying success with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And despite the success, I think there was a little moment of discouragement. And I can't explain where it's coming from as an artist. I have absolutely no idea where it's coming from. If I look at all the figures, I could see
no cause for complaints.
No cause for complaints. So why do I feel this? But meeting the people on the streets and they're talking to you and they're telling you what it's doing, I have started to feel a bounce back that is so thank you very much for sharing that.
Views, clicks, and money does not satisfaction make. Feedback makes satisfaction. You could have 1,000 views and no comments. There's a void. Something is missing. Because art is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. So when feedback comes, when somebody takes the time to say, thanks for this, I really appreciate it. You know, I never knew this. Wow, thanks a lot, or whatever it is. That is what is missing. So when the money is there and the views are there or whatever is there and this feedback is not there, it can feel empty still. Yeah.
It's 2023. You're 62 years old. You're on social media.
Already, boy.
People around the world are watching less TV. They're watching more YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. Has social media and sites like YouTube removed the need for we own TV?
No, they have increased the need. They absolutely have increased the need. Because, let me put it this way. A time in the bamboo had one parts dealer, Bix. That was it. You're going by Bix. Bamboo is Bix. And now we have so many of them there. And we still go to the bamboo. I mean, if it's not here, there, if it's not here, there, if it's not there, there, because we're all looking for something different at a different time. If we want print screen, we go in by Double Z. We know that is demand for that. And it's the same thing with art. You know, if I feeling for some rude girl thing, I know where to go on YouTube to get that. If I'm feeling for something a little more, like a blog or so, I know I go and check out Lyndon thing and see what's happening in Cowra and them kind of things, you know. And if I want to know something, if I want to get entertained by something that there's a archival perspective and a modern day relevance, I look for Gayelle, you know. So it has removed some of the burden from the station to be everything. And so much, because so many people who have passed through the Gayelle, we can see now creating content in so many areas and so many spaces, you know. So it is a good thing. The more, the merrier. It's true, you know. The more, the merrier. And, you know, when families get together, they still watch TV. You know, the YouTube and the phone and the devices and things are for personal consumption. But when there's a big event in the world, we sit in front of a television with our families and we watch like World Cup and them kind of things. Yeah, you can get it online and things, but as if you can't get it on TV or watch it online. But our first go-to for live events is still television. And television, people have not disconnected. They've added connectivity. So like cable providers and so on will still enjoy pretty much close to the same amount of subscription and people who have cable in their homes, but they're now adding a certain speed of internet to be able to have VOD. Yeah, people want their video on demand certain times. Like if I reach home in the night, right, I turn on the TV. And chances I will go through all the channels and not find something. So now I will demand what I want. So I will go to a YouTube or I'll go to some provider online where I could zero into what I want. If I want an action movie, especially in the Gayelle scenario, it has changed, it removed some of the burden from on us.
Has made the archiving process a little bit more difficult because I'm thinking about, there's not this one source. Think about all the contemporary people that we have on TikTok, Facebook, wherever. And there will no kind of, what's that happen? I am so fearful of the day, for instance, that they probably ban TikTok in Trinidad. And then they have all these decades of information that they're probably losing. If they remove YouTube or some server probably goes down.
But boy, I will tell you, where we sit now, it has made it easier for archiving.
Okay.
Because now, I don't have to have enough drive space. I just have to stream it. And I know it there.
Has it made collaboration easier? For instance, you working with, we here sitting together collaborating because of social media. But say, for instance, the contemporaries who have become comedians on the strength of social media, do you get the collaboration that you saw in the early days at, let me say, the West Indian Theather Company? Is there something you would like to see more of among the content creators locally?
I see a lot happening, and I can't say that I fault anybody for anything.
Okay.
I am just sitting and watching with great excitement of everything happening because someday next week I'll be performing with these young comedians in something called Laugh on the Avenue, and I've worked with them before, but I've never seen these guys in a Randy Glasgow show. Or in New York, when I go to a Caribbean comedy show, they're not there. They're online. And I know they want to transition into there, And so me going in there to work is such an honor and such a privilege that these youngsters, let's call Uncle Errol. Uncle Errol doing something. And sometimes they call and say, Uncle Errol, I have a new routine. I come in, I want to get a vibe. And they will come and sit down and do it. And we look at some pointers. They take what they want, don't leave what they don't want, and go, Sometimes I work with a group of them. They would come and we sit down and we talk comedy. And, But what is happening with these young comedians, the younger ones, most of them, they're exposed to foreign comedy in a way that we were not exposed to it when we were developing our styles, right? So they could watch comedy all night if they want. They could go from show to show to show watching stand-up comedy online, and have that kind of influence upon them. But I couldn't do that as a young man. I had to find a book. If I find a Milton Berle book or this book or that book, and 95% of the comedy in those books is not stuff that I could use because it is not from our culture. The references and so on. But 5% of it I might be able to tweak this and do something. Oh, this is like so, whatever it is, So because of their exposure, they are developing in the way they are. And because of the exposure I would have had back in the day, I developed how I developed. But none are less valid than the other because it is the sign of the times.
I am so happy to hear how open-minded you are about this. I'm thinking about a podcast I had with an artist, and I was looking at, he has a YouTube channel as well. And he's talking to an artist, and they're showing the paintings on the wall. They're in a Trinidadian art gallery, and there was nothing in those paintings that helped me identify as a viewer that this is a Caribbean landscape that I'm looking at. And do we have a responsibility as the comedian, as the content creator to keep or hold on to something that makes it Caribbean style comedy? Or is it that, hey boy, this is the signs of the time, this is the directions we go in and we just go with it?
All of what you say is correct, but it's premised on finding your fortune. Because when what is in you comes out, the Caribbean comes out. You can't help that. You grew up here. And all the influence that you may find online that make you paint red bricks in Manhattan and metropolitan skylines and things in your painting, that's when you're painting from what's in your head. But when you go from what's in your heart, the Caribbean will come out. There's no question about it. Even crossovers and all those things. The biggest Caribbean artist of all time, I would have to say, is Bob Marley. And he never do a crossover. He never do a collaboration. He never subtitle his work. This is his Caribbean experience. And that is what makes it great. Nicky Crosby and I were in New York some time ago. We went to do a comedy show. And these scouts saw us at the Apollo Theater. I was blown away. They paid to push back our ticket dates and things for us to come and do audition. We went to an audition. They were blown away. We never get a job. Why? They don't know what to do with us. They don't know what to do with us. We were so Caribbean. They didn't know where to fit it in or what, you know. And we went to a comedy club that night. They took us to a comedy club in Brooklyn. We both performed. And we mashed up the audience. You know, we mashed up the audience. But they were scouts. They were not writers or producers or whatever it is. And they didn't understand where and what to do with us. But if we went to the Apollo and did North American comedy, they would not have noticed us. They would not have noticed us because we're not Pryor or whoever. But because it was this thing, oh, what's this? This is different. And look at people laughing and things. We need to get this. You know. But yeah, the value is the first thing we talk about. Seek your fortune, find yourself, and stay there. No matter what you do, let it come from this person inside. We have, Lyndon, so many persons. The you that greeted me wasn't the you that greeted your father. I saw the difference. The you who would meet that, what to say, boy, offensive security guard is our next you. The you who will meet your daughters somewhere is our next you. The you who will meet your old school teacher somewhere who you got a lot from is our next you again. We have all of these selves within ourselves, and we have a manager. We have a manager who's, without us thinking, pull out the self for this and the self for that and the self for the next. But when we're making art, when we get behind a microphone or in front of a camera, somehow, unconsciously, we reach for something we've seen and put that on. When we reach is when we start reaching within ourselves for the person. We have a self for microphone and a self for camera. But it's human because we don't have a reference of ourselves. It's human to reach and grab Oprah or grab somebody else. You all right? Yeah. It's human for us to do that. But we have to look within ourselves. That's when we get it. And that's when our audiences will get it.
Thank you, sir. I have no more questions for you. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I would like to, in closing, if you would just share with the people the comedy show that you have coming up and where they could find you, what's your future plans, what you're dreaming of these days.
I'm dreaming a lot these days of not being one of the comedians on the comedy show anymore. I am dreaming these days of you coming to see the Errol Fabien show. You know, I don't want to say in concert, just the Errol Fabien. When you come, it's just 90 minutes of me or 120 minutes of me. And I do some of my kaiso, I do some of my comedy, and we have fun, right? That is where I am now. Because since I'm a teenager, I'm one of the comedians on the slate. And I've moved away from that. I've also gotten together with some retired men, and we are bringing a new Calypso tent for 2023. It's called the New Old Brigade. We're powered by Viagra. We're not opening until Ash Wednesday because we're taking long to come, right? So that's just the situation with us, right? But look out for the New Old Brigade. It's Pink Panther, Kid Callaloo, Chris Morris, Hamidullah, myself, George Gonzalez. We will be working with a young actress. This year's show, the concept of it, because I have to have a concept, that's my nature, is that Tuko tell all these old fellas, hey, all you have to come with a medically fit. It's a new paradigm here now, okay? So we're not sure that all you could go on stage. We have no insurance for all you. get a medically fit. So we go to this doctor office. You know, there are some doctors in Trinidad where I could go for sick leave or for wherever you want. You're going for that. You ain't going for nothing else. So we go by this doctor for medically fit and bunks up this nurse in the waiting room. And she is the one who tell us, well, I had to tell the doctor, you know, so you had to sing for me. And the show happens in the waiting room at this doctor's office where we go for medically fit. It's a really fun show. You know, we start writing it and so on already, and it's taking shape great. So look out for that. And look out for everybody. Support art. Support art. Support art. It's a civilizing agent, and it's going to help you self in the long run. Support art and support the artists.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure having you, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Just right.
Just right.